Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and before I get started with this video, first of all, sorry for the late upload. I guess 3 weeks was just the limit of uploading on time, but so far I'm only 1 day late, so everything's okay. The second thing I wanted to talk about is that I won't have a January wrap-up. The reason for that is that I didn't really read enough for me make it worth filming a wrap-up, because I really had a lot of work for uni and I had a lot of exams. I got started on my bachelor paper, which also is a lot of work, so I just didn't get around to reading. I did continue a little bit with Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the illustrated edition, and I'm about 250 pages into The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I did say I would join the Wheel of Time read-along, for which I will leave all the infos down below in the description box. So today's video is kinda going to be a mix of a bit of a Top 5 Wednesday. It's gonna be a bit of a rant video, it's gonna be a bit of a discussion video, and it's just gonna be some thoughts that are floating around in my head that aren't even properly thought out or anything, but that just like are there and that I want to talk about. And the reason for that is that this week's Top 5 Wednesday and next week's Top 5 Wednesday are our favorite either male-male or female-female couples, so our favorite same-sex couples. And I was really looking forward to doing those two Top 5 Wednesdays until I noticed that I don't really have 5 couples for either of the Top 5 Wednesdays, which honestly made me sad and made me think as well. And now I want to talk more about representation in fantasy books, where I also do want to talk about couples and characters that I think are well done. First of all, I think it would be much easier to find books for me with representations of different sexualities if I started reading a lot more romance-focused books again. For example, YA might be considered fantasy, but I still think that the romance aspect plays an important role in all of these books. Whereas a lot of the books that I now read, the romance just isn't that important to the story. It's a part of the story, but you won't read the setup for a romance on the back of the book. So it's really hard unless I go out and search for lists that tell me these books have same-sex relationships to find those books. And honestly, I'm too lazy. The other thing with same-sex relationships with books and homosexual characters in books that I have a problem with is that I actually probably could have gone and looked through my bookshelf and found 5 couples that are at least male-male. I don't think I have read more than 1 or 2 books where there's actually a female-female couple, but most of those couples and those characters give me the feeling of I'm just here for the representation. It's still better than nothing, but it's not something I enjoy reading. And so these romances don't do anything for the story, they're not important for the story, not even in a high fantasy. I'm not focused on the romance, not important way, but they're just there. They don't make any sense in the story. These characters, most of the time, their only characteristic is I'm the gay representative character, and that's it. That's all they're good for. That's their only characteristic. And maybe I'm ignorant, but I would say that being gay is not a personality. I mean, it can influence your personality probably. It can influence how other people see your personality because of prejudices, but it's just not enough personality for me. So a lot of Rick Riordan fell away from me, because even though I did like Nico D'Angelo and the way he was revealed as a gay character, and I don't think that he's just there for the representation, I did not like his relationship. I felt the relationship was rushed and weird and just came out of nowhere, and it's just, again, not important for the story. I do like Magnus and Alec from The City of Bones. I think that's a relationship that actually is really well done. It is one of my favorite relationships in books, and it's one of the examples that actually, if you give me a well done homosexual relationship, most of the time I think they are much more interesting to read about than heterosexual relationships, because mostly they are something different. There's only so much you can do in a relationship, and the aspect of it being a same-sex relationship and the problems they might have to face is something that gives the whole romance storyline, if it's well done, a nice, not twist, that's not what it's here for, it's not there for a twist, but gives it a different depth, and it's not like the same relationship I have seen 100 times before. And so a lot of the times I am more invested in those relationships than in heterosexual relationships. Another amazing relationship that is same-sex, that is actually female-female, that I won't tell who it is because it's kind of a spoiler, is In God's Grave by J. Christoph, which is the second book of the Nevernight Chronicles. I enjoyed this relationship so much. I still enjoy it. It's not, you can't even call it a relationship, but it's just a great dynamic on its own between two characters, without the sexual tension, without the romantic tension. So it's one of my favorite relationships that I have ever read about, hands down. Then another one that I wanted to talk about is, I forgot their names. It's Daniel or something? Daniel? The relationship is focused on one of the main side characters in Trudy Canavan's The Black Magician series, and I absolutely love this. I read this book when I was 11, I think. And at that point, I had never heard of gay or homosexuality. I did grow up with a very open family, especially my mom. I don't even know if it's normal now, but as you know, in school, you don't really learn about different sexualities. You might have sexual education, but homosexuality and other genders and all that stuff is not really part of it. At least it isn't in Austria. At the same time, I also never heard that it's something bad or anything. It's just something I never heard about. And so in the first book, it was hinted very strongly that this character is gay, but I just didn't understand. It was never openly said that he was gay, and for me as an 11-year-old, it was just like, okay, so he's shunned by everyone else and everyone else thinks he's weird, but I have no idea why everyone else thinks he's weird. And then he just goes to this other country and falls in love with this guy, and it's actually a really cute relationship, and it took me ages to just get that, okay, they're falling in love and they're in a relationship and they're not just like turning out to be really good friends. At the same time, I was just in my head and I was like, okay, so yeah, that's a thing now, but why does everyone else hate that? It was like so obvious that everyone else thought it was weird and not good, or whatever was bad was abnormal. But in my like 11-year-old head, I was kind of like, so what? There are two men in love. What's wrong with that? So that is still one of my favorite relationships. It is a really cute relationship, actually, and I really need to reread the series. A reason why I think there's not a lot of queer representation in fantasy, and especially high fantasy, I'm not talking about urban fantasy, I'm just purely talking about high fantasy, is that a lot of high fantasy is inspired by medieval Europe. And since everyone knows, Christianity and medieval Europe wasn't necessarily a place that was that open towards homosexuality, I feel like every fantasy author thinks that also shouldn't be normal in their world. What I think a lot of people forget is that you're the one building the world. You can literally do anything you want to do to this world. I mean, it wouldn't be believable, at least not for me, if you have a society where there's mostly gay people. If you want to have a society that isn't based on stealing children from somewhere else or holding slaves for breeding reasons, then I don't think it's believable to have a society that is mostly gay. Just from a point of view where you do want your society to reproduce. However, you could, for example, have a society that is polygamous, where you always have one lover from each gender. Literally everything is open to you. So that's a message to all the authors. Don't just copy medieval Europe and throw in a few magic things, but just think about the possibilities. You're not bound to any societal rules except for the basic ones. The only thing where I do think it's very interesting and where I think like homophobia in a way can be part of a society is actually an example in the Readalong Chronicles, where the king or high prince, I think it's called, is homosexual. He's also a pedophile. He's just like not a very good person. But if you have a monarch and someone who has to kind of reproduce, if you want to have a society that is based on lineage, then you kind of have to put in some homophobia. But also, again, that could be a very interesting storyline where you have a monarch, you have a king, you have a prince who has the pressure to have heirs and he has to marry, but he's actually gay. I think that's a storyline where you don't just have a gay character because you have to have a gay character in it. And because you have a main character who is gay, of course, being gay can't be their only characterization. And so, long story short, there's so many possibilities, and you would finally have gay representation in a main character, which is not often the case. And I do think it would, for example, be an interesting storyline. I would write it myself if I could write, but I can't, so I won't write it. But anyway, queer representation is just something that I think about, and the more I think about it, the more I notice that even my favorite authors aren't very good with queer representation in their books. Brandon Sanderson has, I think, his first gay character mentioned in Oathbringer now, but he's just like a small side character that I can't even remember the name of most of the time. And Bishop has one gay character who was kind of introduced as the token gay guy who was the dance teacher of the main character, but she did change that, and that character got a lot more important in later books. So he did kind of get other personality traits aside from being gay. And also what I love about Anne Bishop's books, although it's only hinted at, it's not specifically said, maybe it's just my interpretation, but there is actually a female character who is asexual. And the reason I think that is because it is mentioned once that she's not interested in men, which for me then meant that she's probably lesbian. But then later it's mentioned that she is in a relationship with a guy and they have an adopted daughter, but they're not in any type of physical relationship. So I'm just like, I don't know, might be asexual, might not be. I don't know enough about that, honestly. And it's not said specifically, but it's just something that I interpreted the way. Again, as something that I say at the end, it's not just about gay representation, it's not just about lesbian or gay relationships, it's just any type of queerness that should probably be more of in high fantasy. Especially, again, you can do whatever you want as an author. You can take cultures or times as inspiration, but that doesn't mean you have to copy your culture in your books from that. You have a genre in which you are literally open to do anything you want as long as it makes a good story. So why not do that? So that was it for this video. It was a bit ranty, it was a bit all over the place. I hope I still kind of made sense. I tried writing down bullet points, but that didn't really work. This video, more than any other that I have made so far, please leave your opinions and comments down below what you think about gay representation and queer representation in high fantasy, and if you also think that high fantasy is a genre where there are a lot more ways to get more representation into this genre than probably any other genre. I'll leave all those comments down below. All the links to my social media and stuff are in the description box. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!